Kyouko Hori and Izumi Miyamura are two completely different individuals with vast differences in their personalities. The two do have occasional interaction in class, but it seems far from anything even close to what you'd call a friendship. Hori is your average popular girl in class with multiple guys interested in her. Hori's appearance and grades lead you to take her as a fashionable girl, but she's completely opposite at home with a simple personality due to her household work. Hori's visited by Miyamura, who is completely different from the nerdy guy he is at school, with piercings and tattoos all over him when he walks Hori's little brother Sota back home. The two surprisingly get along well, and Miyamura starts occasionally visiting Hori after school to hang out with her and Sota. After another usual day at school, Miyamura's real personality gets discovered by a classmate, Yoshikawa, as he rushes over the school fence to buy eggs for Hori at the market sale. Miyamura's school life changes a little after he befriends Ishikawa at school, but after Ishikawa reveals his feelings for Hori, Miyamura starts avoiding Hori at school. Hori doesn't like this cold behavior and confronts Miyamura at her place when he declares his intentions of not hanging out with her anymore. Hori gets upset at Miyamura when he reveals that he was only avoiding her at school so that he can protect her reputation, after Hori reveals that she had rejected Ishikawa when he confessed to her at school after class. Sometime later, Hori and Miyamura are running an errand outside together when Miyamura asks Hori about her music taste, and Hori seems to be only aware of songs from different anime. Back at her place, Hori explains about Miyamura to her mom, who is seen to be rather curious about the guy in an uncertain way. Hori's mom asks her about Miyamura's first name, and she feels dumb about herself for not knowing it despite hanging out with him all this time. Hori starts her little adventure of discovering Miyamura's first name, but fails after multiple hilarious efforts. After having several schemes of hers fail, Miyamura finally reveals his first name to her when he visits their house again later. At school, Hori helps out with the student council's paperwork a lot and seems to be in a rough position to her friends from all that workload. Hori gets the job done and delivers the paperwork the same day, but upon Miyamura's arrival at school the next day, a commotion is caused in the hallway by the student council members who demand Hori to apologize for misplacing some of the paperwork. Quite cruel of them, huh? Hori is about to apologize, but is stopped by Miyamura, who moves through the crowd taking his glasses off only to headbutt the president of the council, Sengoku. He reveals that the one who actually lost the paperwork was another student council member, Remy. Remy seems to be in a little trouble, and the student council leaves after apologizing to Hori. Hori reveals her reason to help the student council out of being guilty of bullying Sengoku when they were kids. Hori's birthday arrives, and after a little brainstorming at school with Ishikawa, Miyamura gets her a CD of popular songs for her birthday. It's the little things that count, after all, am I right? A flashback reveals Miyamura's gloomy past as the loner of the class when a class project is assigned, and he doubts himself about being friends with Yoshikawa, Hori, and Ishikawa at school. Miyamura gets surprised when the rest of the three casually form a group around him for a class project, making him feel that he has people he can call friends now. Miyamura has a little chat with Ishikawa on the rooftop about how he thinks about him, and Ishikawa's answers reveal a little harsh reality of Miyamura's gloomy personality. Ishikawa later confirms to Miyamura that they are friends after all, seemingly making Miyamura happy. Miyamura is also revealed to be scared of horror movies, especially watching them in darkness at Hori's place. The next day, Remy is casually having a chat with Hori, and she brings up taking Miyamura for herself as a joke in the conversation. Hori acts up after hearing this and declares Miyamura hers in a surge of emotions. The same day after school, Hori grabs Miyamura's hand at her place, making her almost confess to him. The two seem to be clearly drawn to each other here. Ishikawa confronts Miyamura about Hori, and Miyamura's denial of anything going on makes Ishikawa angry that later leads the two to get into a little fight. Miyamura reveals the reason behind the fight is Hori, and Ishikawa accepts in front of Hori that it wasn't really a fight since he was the only one who actually got beaten the crap out. The summer season arrives, and after Ishikawa helps Sakura from the student council in picking up some paperwork, the two have a little conversation and Sakura develops feelings for Ishikawa at this point. Miyamura shares ice cream that he got from Hori with Ishikawa and with Sengoku, who later joins the two. The three have a nice chat, and Sengoku invites the other two to hang out in the student council room. Miyamura and friends swing by the council room, and the group plays a little game to decide who will be buying the drinks. Hori and Miyamura get selected, and while they're out, a little gossip about their dating starts. Sakura shows affection to Ishikawa by offering him tissues sometime later. Miyamura is out with Hori when they get approached by Miyamura's middle school friend, Shindo, and we get to witness a hilarious interaction between the two. Back at Hori's place, she gets sick with a fever and is forced to rest in bed by Sota. She wakes up after a nap to Miyamura nursing her. Miyamura leaves after getting her supplies and confessing his feelings to her. Hori stays home the next day to get some more rest and is stressed when Sota breaks the news of him seeing Miyamura with another girl during the day. The girl is later revealed to be Shindo's girlfriend, Chika. Hori overthinks the whole situation by mistaking Miyamura for two-timing her. She avoids Miyamura the next day at school, and later when she finally confronts him around the school entrance, she gets upset from a misunderstanding and gets angry at Miyamura, throwing a book in his face. Miyamura visits Hori's place to return her textbook, and after apologizing to each other, Miyamura explains the whole situation to Hori, kinda leaving her dumbfounded. Their little conversation is interrupted by Hori's dad, Kyosuke, who has a little interview with Miyamura where Hori discloses him as her boyfriend, hence beginning the official dating. Miyamura feels bad for Ishikawa and lets him know about the dating situation. Ishikawa initially feels bad, but decides to stay friends with Miyamura. Sakura encounters Remi in the school corridor, where she encourages Sakura about the insecurity of her looks compared to Hori, who Ishikawa had a crush on. Miyamura visits the Hori residence as usual and ends up staying at their place with Hori's dad for the night. The two leave for school the next day, and the rumors of the two dating spread around the school. Listening to people talk bad about Hori's choice after rejecting so many guys at school, Miyamura decides to cut his hair the next day before coming to school. Miyamura's sudden change in appearance shocked almost every single person in class, and many girls started to get affectionate towards him, making Hori feel jealous. Hori and Miyamura visit Shindo's place for testing out some candies, and let's just say some interesting events took place during the candy tasting. Miyamura had drawn a lot of attention at school, and a girl named Sawada declared him her rival for Hori-san. Sawada didn't get along with Miyamura, and the two had a little argument over Hori's claim. On his way back home, Miyamura came to know for the first time that Sawada is his neighbor, and he invited Sawada inside, offering her cake. The two warmed up to each other a little and shared stories about their families. The next day at the bus stop, Sawada was getting bothered by some guys, and she leaned on Miyamura to scare them off with his piercings. She later revealed that she is usually scared to talk to guys, but feels fine around Miyamura. After Hori and Miyamura started dating, Yoshikawa's affection for Ishikawa started growing. She is walking down the hallway with Ishikawa to take the trash out while asking him to help her pick a DVD later when they run into Sakura, who ends up getting her clothes stained from the collision. Ishikawa apologizes and gives Sakura his own jersey to hide the stain that leads to the growth of Sakura's feelings. Sakura returns Ishikawa's jersey after washing it the next day and gives cookies to him as a thanks. Yoshikawa gets jealous of this act and asks for Miyamura's help in baking herself. She ends up burning the cupcakes, but Ishikawa eats them anyway, encouraging her to bake more. Miyamura had to leave for a trip to Hokkaido to attend a funeral, and the separation added to Hori's anxiety. Her anxiety grew even more after Miyamura's phone died on the trip as well, and her feelings were clear on her face. Miyamura returned, and the two reunited in the elevator, welcoming each other with a tearful embrace. Hori gets advised by the girls to act more submissive around Miyamura after he came back while watching a horror movie, but her attempt at acting docile ended up making Miyamura scared instead. Hori's embarrassment is coped with by Miyamura after he reminded her that he loves her for who she is. Miyamura dreams about meeting his past self in middle school and how he used to hate everything around him, even the teachers. Miyamura assures his younger self in the dream about how he will find friends as well one day, filling his dark and gloomy world with colors. Other than Miyamura, Remi also reminisces about how she met Sengoku back in the day, and despite being a nerd and not the most confident guy, he confessed his love to her back then and started dating her. Miyamura was receiving a manicure from Hori and hanging out with her as usual when he realized that Hori has masochistic tendencies and wishes for Miyamura to scream at her. Miyamura spent the next day trying to act harsh towards her, but ended up failing to maintain his character. He ended up scaring two girls to death after Hori kept insisting on him talking harshly with her. While all this is going on, Yoshikawa gets asked out by a guy from another class named Yanagi. She consults her friends about how to reject him, and they end up deciding on making Ishikawa act as her boyfriend, presuming that Ishikawa is better looking than Yanagi. Everyone is surprised after finding out how good looking Yanagi is, but Yoshikawa still rejects his feelings, claiming that she's just a simple and plain girl. Despite his rejection, Yanagi befriends the rest of the gang and ends up joining the group himself. Miyamura are walking home after school together as usual, when Miyamura runs into another middle school classmate named Tanihara, the same kid who used to bully him. They talk down on him for being a weak guy who makes his little girlfriend carry his bag home, and proceed with their trash talk until Hori gets mad at him and his friend, ending up giving both of them a good beating. Tanihara visits Shindo after getting beat up, and reminisces about his problem with Miyamura being the death of the rabbits back in the day in middle school. Later, Hori continues requesting Miyamura to be rough with her, and he reluctantly agrees, hitting Hori in front of a convenience store where Tanihara and his friends saw them, thinking that Miyamura is a bigger monster than Hori herself. Miyamura meets Mizuchi at school, and their interaction is initially cold since Mizuchi has a crush on Hori, but the two understand each other and warm up later. Tanihara remembers his past for blaming Miyamura for the death of the rabbits, and reflects on his action after asking Shindo about him on the phone. He visits Miyamura's cake shop where Miyamura welcomes him nicely, and Tanihara promises to come back after internally apologizing to Miyamura for his actions. Hori and Miyamura look back at their lives in the middle school, and Miyamura is now able to look at it better after getting close to people now and actually having friends. Miyamura's closeness with Tanihara develops a lot recently, and this development makes Hori jealous since Miyamura is spending a lot of time with other guys. Miyamura gets mistaken for having a preference change into guys, and Hori hilariously requests him to please choose a girl if he ever wishes to fall for someone other than her. Apart from Hori and Miyamura, the ship of Ishikawa and Yoshikawa seems to be sailing as well, since they seem to be getting rather close to each other. This closeness devastated Sakura, who had feelings for Ishikawa as well, and she got sad from their supposed dating, while Yuki herself is unsure of how to deal with her growing feelings for Ishikawa. Yuki started comparing herself with Sakura, and remarked that she is a dark and gloomy personality compared to Sakura when having a conversation with Ishikawa on the rooftop of the school building. Ishikawa told Yuki about Sakura on the rooftop and proceeded to encourage Yuki by telling her about everything he loves about Yuki, meaning snow, despite it being cold, and tells her about the excitement developing for the arrival of the snow, Yuki. Ishikawa and Yoshikawa, or Toru and Yuki, were now much closer as they held hands while walking back. Sakura saw the two after school when she was in Sengoku's office, and burst into tears after witnessing their closeness, remarking that she got rejected even before she could confess her love. It is revealed that the free-spirited Ayura is actually a big brother, and on the same day, the group tries to get close to Yanagi with the boys, trying their own ways. Miyamura worries about his relationship with the guys at first, but later develops a bond with Yanagi himself. Miyamura takes Sawada around to get her comfortable with the guys, and she is improving with her fear of guys until Ayura comes and troubles her with his loud personality. Then Ayura gets sick and doesn't talk for one day, and Sawada mistakes the silent treatment as Ayura hating her. Back at home, Ayura's little sister, Motoko, gets discouraged by her teachers at school that say that she will never be able to get into a high school of her choice, and this rudeness made her sad. Ayura gets fired up after listening to this nonsense and encourages her sister into trying her best. Motoko visits Hori's residence after Ayura requested Hori to teach her, and the two had a little conversation as Hori asked Miyamura to join them for Christmas dinner, but Miyamura refused since he has a lot of work to handle at the cake shop. At a restaurant, Ishikawa consults Ayura and Sengoku about his current relationship with Yoshikawa, and even though they are not technically dating right now, he is comfortable with their current relationship. Later, Yoshikawa visits Ishikawa's place to play some games, and in his room, the two get embarrassed and anxious with no idea of what to do. The situation is complicated even more by Ishikawa's home caretaker, who teases him continuously. Christmas Eve arrives and everyone spends their time with their families. Miyamura also visits the Hori residence for cake delivery and ends up spending more time with the family than he initially intended to. Hori walks with Miyamura on his way back home, and he ends up telling her that they should get married after Hori reveals that she wishes for them to stay together even after the end of the school year approaches and all the students pack their stuff from their lockers. While packing in the student council, Remy wishes to go on a trip with her friends after school while worrying about staying together afterwards before she is reassured by the others that they will continue staying friends even after graduation. Miyamura reflects on what his high school life would have been like if he had never met Hori that way and decides to never forget who he was anymore in life. The graduation ceremony arrives and Miyamura ends up sneezing during Sengoku's speech, making everyone laugh and embarrassing Sengoku. Sawada says her goodbyes to Hori, and Sakura thanks Ishikawa. Yanagi pitches the idea of a trip after graduation to Yoshikawa, and Kyosuke visits the school after ceremony to annoy Hori and Miyamura. The session wraps up with Motoko witnessing a different side of her brother at school, and Miyamura thinking about things he loves about Hori, wondering about what he can do to show his thanks to her in the future.